Okay, we have hundreds of people on the line, so I think we should make a start. Thank you all for taking this time out of what I assume is your lunch break today to join us for this budget webinar session. We're going to spend some time going through what was announced on the budget on the 26th of November, as there was some quite consequential changes announced for how we will all save our money in the coming years. So we're going to look at what was announced and what it means for you, with a particular focus on cash ISA and lifetime ISA, as that's where we did get most of the questions. We'll then look at some of the other announcements, and then we've selected some of the most popular customer questions to address in the Q&A section. There is also a Q&A function in Zoom that many of you have already spotted. And if we have time, I'll answer some of the questions that are popped in there. But we are looking to have you away in just about over 30 minutes. One of the first questions that comes in, that is always one of the most popular ones, is, will there be a recording of this session? And a short answer to that one is yes, there will be a recording of this session, and it will be circulated to you over the course of the next couple of days. So if you can't join the full session, not a problem. The other thing I need to say from a compliance perspective is nothing that you hear today is financial advice. It is guidance and education to help you understand more about the potential changing landscape of how we save and invest our money. If you do need financial advice, you should go and speak to a financial advisor. Okay, let's make a start. Right, let's have a chat about what was announced. So let's look at some of the key changes at a high level before we delve into some of them in a bit more detail. As I mentioned, the cash ISA and the lifetime ISA were potentially the most significant ones, and those are the ones where we did get the most questions. Probably the most headline-grabbing announcement was the cash ISA, and this was widely speculated. But the cash ISA allowance will be cut to £12,000 from April 2027. But this is one that obviously we will go into in a lot more detail shortly. There was also a freeze on income tax thresholds, which again was fairly widely predicted. And essentially what this means is that if the government keeps the different bands at which you pay income tax static, for example, you pay the higher rate at income tax at the moment at just over £50,000, then as people's salary rises over time, which hopefully they do, the government collects more in tax. And actually, by keeping these bands static, they collect a lot more in tax. It is anticipated that keeping those thresholds the same will raise about £12 billion between here and 2031. And it was announced that the income tax thresholds will not move until that point. So outside of the ISA and saving and investing landscape, that was one of the bigger ones, which will impact us all and how much tax we pay over the course of the next 5 or 6 years. The government also announced that they would be lifting the so-called two-child benefit cap. And then back on the personal finance side of things, they announced a cap on tax-efficient pension savings from April 2029. But again, more on that later, and more on the consultation that was announced into the future of the lifetime ISA. And finally, if you are saving or investing outside of ISAs, tax on interest earned on savings, dividends, and property tax will all go up by 2 percentage points in the coming years. Those ones are coming in at different times, but it makes saving in an ISA, a tax-free account, ever more important as those tax rates for outside of ISAs continue to increase. Cool. Now, before we go into those in more detail, starting with the cash ISA, I want to do a quick poll, and this is going to rely on some tech wizardry from my side. So bear with me for 1 second while I post this onto your screens. But it should be up there for you now. And let's get started by seeing where you are today. And you might think that I am completely stupid by asking this question, having just shown you a slide with a load of tax rises and allowance cuts. But there is method to my madness. So the question that I want to ask you is, after the budget a couple of weeks ago, how confident do you feel about your ability to hit your financial goals? So do you feel much more confident, a little bit more confident? Do you feel the same, a bit less confident, or a lot less confident? And I'll switch back and see if we can get some of the results. Okay, Not particularly surprising on this one. I will end the poll there. I'll share the results, so hopefully you can see it on the screen. Not too surprising, as I say, given I've gone through a slide of tax rises and allowance cuts, but most people are feeling a bit or a lot less confident, or at best, kind of most people are feeling the same. But as I say, there's a little bit of method in my madness, and I'm not surprised by that answer, but let's address a couple of things. If you are somebody who looks at the media regularly, particularly around the budget time, you will have noticed that the general mood around saving, investing, potentially even the economy isn't great right now. I'm not going to say right now whether that is right or wrong, but what I will say is that despite some of the negative moves in the budget on things like your allowances, many and varied financial products still exist in order to help you hit your financial goals, whatever they might be. So, for example, we will talk about the lifetime ISA that will help you to save up your deposit, and that is around for the foreseeable future. You've still got a relatively generous allowance on the cash ISA side of things if you're saving for an emergency fund or whatever that might be. You've got the stocks and shares ISA that helps you invest tax efficiently, and you've got pensions that still help you save tax efficiently for retirement, despite the cap on salary sacrifice that is coming in. So I think it is very, very important. Sometimes it's easy to become disillusioned with our savings and our investing. It is very important to say, not to say, oh, I'm not going to save into a pension because they keep making changes to salary sacrifice or whatever it might be, or I'm not going to be able to buy a house because they are consulting yet again on the lifetime ISA. Those products are still there. They are still there to help you towards your financial goals. And my job and Moneybox's job is to help guide you around the things that are changing, but as much as we possibly can do, help you feel confident that it is still possible to hit your financial goals, regardless of the policy changes that may or may not be announced. So, method in my madness there. And let's see if we can help you feel a little bit more confident about some of these changes by the time that we get to the end of this webinar. But let's get into the meat of what it was announced. So the cash ISA was obviously the big one. This was widely speculated in advance. Again, if you're somebody that does keep an eye on the media, you won't have been able to avoid the rumors and the speculation that have been going on for around about a year leading up to this budget on the cash ISA. And eventually, on the 26th of November, the Chancellor did announce that the cash ISA allowance would be cut from £20,000 to £12,000 from April 2027. Now, it's very important to remember that your total ISA allowance will still be £20,000, but the maximum that you can put into the cash ISA will be £12,000. If you had more to save or invest, so if you still had £20,000 to invest, you could put £12,000 into the cash ISA and you could put £8,000 into a stocks and shares ISA. If you are so inclined, you can still put the full £20,000 into the stocks and shares ISA. So it's just the cash element that will be restricted to a maximum of £12,000 from April 2027. Now, over 65s have got a carve out on this one, and they will still be able to contribute £20,000 to a cash ISA. So that rule will not apply to anybody that is over 65. Still TBC what happens when you actually turn 65. And I'll touch on in a minute what we expect to happen over the course of the next 18 months while these rules are being finalized. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty around what happens when you turn 65. The day after the budget, HMRC did put out an announcement and saying that there are further rules that will be proposed. And basically, these are trying to stop all of the relatively obvious workarounds that would exist if you just had a different allowance for cash ISA and stocks and shares ISA. So the rules that are being currently proposed but have not been published in detail include a ban on transfers from stocks and shares ISA to cash ISA, a ban on cash-like products in stocks and shares ISAs, and potentially a charge on interest paid on cash in stocks and shares ISAs. So this is to close the loopholes and, as I say, the relatively obvious workarounds that would exist if they didn't put these rules in place. And again, these new rules that they are putting in place will also not apply to anybody that is over 65. Essentially, that is all the detail that we have right now on how this will work. The legislation is due to come out at some stage in the middle of 2026. We will all have the opportunity to provide our opinion at that point when they open this consultation on exactly how all of these bits and pieces will work. But as I say, what is on the screen at the moment is all of the detail that has been published by the Chancellor, by the Treasury, by HMRC right now. As a little bit of background, the aim of all of this is apparently to hopefully get people to invest more, basically. I think hopefully we can all agree that that is a good thing. Generally speaking, here at Moneybox, we do think there are probably millions of people in the UK who could and should be investing more. We would argue that this was probably not the way that we would have gone about doing it in terms of cutting the cash ISA allowance. We believe that people need far more financial education, guidance, support around the decision to start investing, because it can be quite a scary thing, and ongoing support once you are starting to invest and you potentially start to see markets go up and down, which is a perfectly normal part of investing. So we will be continuing to do that anyway, but the government have decided that as part of their measures to get more people investing, you will be able to put less into a cash ISA than a stocks and shares ISA from April 2027. Other thing to note, this is a limit on future contributions. So the £12,000 allowance does not impact what is currently in your cash ISA. It does not exist for the tax year that we are currently in, which is 2025, 2026, and it does not exist for the next tax year from April 26 to April 2027. Your cash ISA allowance will still be £20,000 at that point, and it also doesn't impact what you've currently got into your cash ISAs. It is unclear at the moment in terms of those other rules, whether that will impact new money going in from April 2027, or whether it will impact what is already in stocks and shares ISAs. Again, that will come in the consultation next year. And I think the last thing to note is there was rumor and speculation that the cash ISA allowance could have been cut as low as £4,000 and potentially coming in from April 2026. So not a great mindset necessarily to have, but this isn't quite as bad as was speculated potentially 6 months ago. So that's everything that we have on cash ISA. We've got some specific Q&A questions at the end that get a little bit more into the detail, but that is all of the information that we have right now. And as I say, there is a consultation due next year where more of the detail will come out. But in the meantime, I do have another poll for you. I realize I'm still sharing the results of the last one. Apologies if that interrupted your view of the slides, but I've got another poll for you. Okay. One sec. There we go. Very minor technical issue. Okay, you've all probably had plenty of time to read the question that is on the slides, but this is either a real or a hypothetical question, but I'm interested in what the government's ambition is here, and that is to get more people investing, and whether actually this cut to the cash ISA allowance in your situation, whether that would incentivize you to invest or not. So if you imagine the situation that you had more than £12,000 to save in the tax year 27, 28, let's say you had £20,000 that you could currently put into your cash ISA, what would you do with the additional £8,000 from April 2027? Would you, for example, keep it in your current account? Would you move it to another savings account, hoping to get a better interest rate? Would you actually invest it in a stocks and shares ISA, or would you potentially invest it somewhere else that isn't a stocks and shares ISA? There's probably other options that I haven't thought about. Feel free to pop those into the Q&A or the chat, but these are probably the most common ones that we could think of. Okay. Interesting. Okay, I'll share the result on this one. Quite a lot of people would actually take that step of investing it in a stocks and shares ISA. Interested, and we might do a little bit more research on this, of whether these are people who are already investing, or if this is actually a sign that the cut to the cash ISA might work for some people in terms of incentivizing them to actually take that first step of opening up a stocks and shares ISA and taking that very important first step over towards investing. Thank you for keeping going with me on the polls. There's only one more to come. Right, on to lifetime ISA. Cool. So again, we have a little bit of detail on this, but quite a lot more is to come relatively early in the new year. The very, very, very important thing to remember now is that nothing is changing on the lifetime ISA in the short or even, I would say, the medium term. In the budget documents that were published after the Chancellor sat down on Wednesday, the 26th, the government announced that they would start a consultation on the lifetime ISA in 2026 with a view to creating a new first-time buyer product, specific product that would then subsequently replace the lifetime ISA. I spoke with Treasury quite quickly after the budget, and they have assured me that nothing changes with the lifetime ISA until at least April 2027. And we are probably looking at April 2028 for this new first-time buyer product to come into existence. And they have said that up until that point, people using the lifetime ISA will be able to continue to use it. You'll be able to continue to save into it. You'll be able to continue to receive the government bonus. And even up until that point, people can keep opening lifetime ISAs, as I say, at least until April 2027, probably until April 2028. So we got a lot of questions in pre-submitted of people saying, what do I need to do with my lifetime ISA? Is anything changing immediately? Do I need to change my plans of how I'm using the lifetime ISA? Certainly not in the short and the medium term. And even in the long term, as we'll come on to in a minute, there is an awful lot of uncertainty about how all of this will play out from a product and a policy perspective. So I would argue that there is absolutely no need to change your lifetime ISA plans, whatever they were before this announcement was made. Now, a couple of the reasons why we think they are doing this. One is some concerns have been raised over the course of the last couple of years about the retirement use case of the lifetime ISA. So just for anybody that has not come across the lifetime ISA before, you can save £4,000 in a lifetime ISA per tax year, and the government will top that up by £1,000. You can use that money for two purposes. One is purchasing your first home up to the value of £450,000. And the second one is for retirement. So you can withdraw from your lifetime ISA penalty-free from the age of 60. Some arguments have been made that that dual purpose is confusing for some people. We at Moneybox see no evidence of that. We have provided a lot of evidence to the government and to the Treasury to say that people do not find this confusing. But unfortunately, on that one, they have not yet listened to us. The second area where concerns have come up about the lifetime ISA, and this is something that we at Moneybox have raised with Treasury and the government, is around the withdrawal penalty. So anybody that uses the lifetime ISA is probably very aware of this. But if you use the lifetime ISA for any purpose that isn't purchasing your first home or for retirement, you get a 25% penalty on your funds before you're able to take them out. Now, the way that works, you get a 25% government bonus on the way in, 25% penalty on the way out. But actually, the way that the maths works is you lose 6.25% of your own money, not just the government bonus, which we think is unfair and has been unfair since the lifetime ISA was introduced back in 2017. And we have been campaigning heavily for that to be reduced so that you only lose the government bonus. Now, the good news is the Treasury have acknowledged that that is an issue. The not so good news is they have taken this route in terms of replacing the lifetime ISA with a new product from April 2028, rather than putting in place what we feel is the relatively simple solution of reducing the penalty from 25% to 20%, which incidentally they did during the pandemic. So they've listened, but unfortunately they've at the moment taken a slightly different route in terms of solving that issue. The last thing I'll say at the moment on lifetime ISA is that we have been here before. In fact, just last year. The photo on the slide is me giving evidence to a body called the Treasury Select Committee, who were doing an inquiry into the lifetime ISA actually only in February of 2025. We were arguing that the lifetime ISA is an absolutely fantastic product that is helping millions of people save, invest, buy houses, and plan for retirement. Yes, there are absolutely areas that need attention, such as the house price cap, which we'll come on to in the Q&A, and the withdrawal penalty, which I've just mentioned. But I would strongly argue, and I will continue to argue, that we should fix those issues with the existing product rather than creating a new one. Okay. To that end, one more final poll for you. Let's see if I can do this slightly more smoothly than I did the last poll. Yes, I can. Excellent. Cool. That would help. There we go. Okay. Still not perfectly smooth, but we'll get there. Okay. This is a question on just, do you think a new product is actually needed? And this might be mostly of interest to people already with the lifetime ISA or thinking of using the lifetime ISA, but very intrigued about what your view is on the announcement of a consultation and potentially a new product. Okay. Thank you for that. A lot of love for the lifetime ISA. Very few people thinking that a completely new product is needed, which is good because that is what we have been telling them. So we'll take that into those conversations. But a lot of people saying changes are needed around the house price cap and the withdrawal penalty, which we would absolutely agree with. So we will continue to take those conversations into the consultation in the new year. Now, what is not clear in that consultation is whether it will purely be a consultation on the new product or whether things like the house price cap or the withdrawal penalty of the existing lifetime ISA will be up for debate. Regardless of whether they're included in the consultation or not, we as Moneybox, as a provider of lifetime ISAs, will be including those in our response and in all of our debates with government, MPs and Treasury going forward. So we will keep fighting that fight to get the house price cap updated and the withdrawal penalty changed as well. Okay. And there's a little bit more on the lifetime ISA and the cash ISA in the Q&A as well. But time to spotlight some of the other key changes that were announced. So I mentioned that there is a freeze on income tax thresholds, which has been extended until April 2031. This is known as fiscal drag. If that is a headline you have seen in any of the media, basically what that means is you are being dragged into higher rate tax bands just by salary increases and inflation. And that is the big revenue raiser for the government that they announced in this budget. Increases to saving, property and dividend taxes by 2 percentage points makes the whole idea of saving into an ISA ever more important. Two-child benefit cap being lifted. And then there are changes to pension salary sacrifice. Now, it's really important that we understand what's actually changing here and when it changes. So currently, you can pay in a reasonably generous amount into a pension on an annual basis, so £60,000 a year into a pension, and benefit from relief on income tax and national insurance. Basically, you either don't pay income tax or national insurance if you're contributing to your pension from your salary, from your paycheck. It goes into your pension before income tax and national insurance is calculated, or you get your income tax back if you're someone who is self-employed and just contributing into a private pension, for example. From April 2029, so still, what's that, 3.5 years away, only the first £2,000 will benefit from national insurance relief. So you won't be able to pay in £60,000 and not pay any national insurance. That will be capped at £2,000. You can still contribute more than this, and it will still be tax efficient to do so. It will just be very slightly less tax efficient than it is today. You will pay either 2% or 8% national insurance charge, and your employer will pay 15% national insurance charge on any contributions above £2,000. So very, very important to say it is not a cap on how much you can pay into your pension. That is still, for the moment, £60,000. It is just a cap on the national insurance benefit. It would, if it happens, as I say, it's still 3.5 years away. Anything can change kind of between here and then, will make paying into your pension marginally less tax efficient than it is today. Now, that is not me downplaying this announcement. That is not me saying that I think this is a good idea. Again, we have publicly said that we should be making it more appealing for people to pay into their pensions, and certainly not less appealing when we have millions of people under saving for retirement at the moment. But it's really important that we don't see the £2,000 as a cap on your total contributions, because that is not what it is. And it's very important that despite the headwinds that are announced on pensions policy from budget to budget, we realize that pensions are still a very, very tax efficient way of saving for your retirement. And we don't give up on pension savings despite them becoming marginally less tax efficient from 2029. Cool. Okay, on to the pre-submitted Q&A. Thank you very much for submitting. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions in advance, and we tried to select the ones that we thought were most appropriate for a wider audience in terms of how many people they will potentially impact. So first question was, will the new £12,000 cap for cash ISA from April 2027 impact old contributions into cash ISA accounts? No, they will not. This is a cap on your future contributions from April 2027. You can still contribute £20,000 to a cash ISA this year if you want to. You can contribute £20,000 into a cash ISA for next year, tax year, from April 26 to 27. And then from then on, it will be capped at £12,000. And if you had £50,000 already in a cash ISA from April 2027, these new rules will not impact that money that is already within the cash ISA. It is only on future contributions. Okay, for those of us using the lifetime ISA as a boost to retirement savings, what does the consultation hold? Very good question. Again, we have spoken to Treasury since the budget. The details of the consultation are still being written, but the Treasury have said directly to us, it is their intention that anyone who is currently using the lifetime ISA for retirement will be able to continue to use it up until retirement. So again, at the moment, your plans should not change. Do keep an eye on the consultation if you're interested in those sorts of things. If you're not particularly interested and just want to understand what goes on as the consultation progresses, obviously at Moneybox, we will keep you updated. But the current messaging from the Treasury is no change on people who are currently using the lifetime ISA for retirement savings. Next question. Again, we got a lot of lifetime ISA based questions. Can I still use my lifetime ISA and still get the bonus every year, even when they replace it? So what I will say is you can certainly do this up until the new product is available, which might be April 2027, but more realistically, we're looking at April 2028. So you still have another 2.5 years, most likely, that you can continue to use the lifetime ISA and get the bonus. Again, the current messaging from the Treasury is that if you already have a lifetime ISA open by the time the new product comes along, you will still be able to contribute and get the bonus going into 2028, 2029, 2030, even when the new product comes in. At that point, the current intention is just new lifetime ISAs will not be able to be opened from either April 2027 or April 2028. Again, I have to say, very important, keep an eye out on communications from us, as we will keep you up to date throughout once the consultation comes out next year. But the current messaging is that if you have a lifetime ISA open, you will be able to get the bonus every year, even after the new product is available. Now, should mention, a very open question consultation is whether you will be able to transfer lifetime ISAs over to whatever this new product is. Obviously, there's a big question of whether you would want to do that. We don't know what this new product looks like right now, whether it would be beneficial for you to transfer over the lifetime ISA into whatever that looks like. It is simply too early to be answering those questions. But again, keep an eye out for communications from Moneybox over the course of the next 12 months while all of this is thrashed out. Okay, pensions one. Are pensions still the most tax efficient way to save for retirement? Short answer on this one is yes. As I mentioned, despite the salary sacrifice changes that are not coming in until April 2029, even when they do come in, pension savings will become marginally less tax efficient than they are today, but they are still a fantastic way of saving for your retirement and pretty much the most tax efficient way out there. As we've talked about on this webinar, you can also use the lifetime ISA to save for your retirement. Which one of those is better very much depends on your personal circumstances. But for most people, pensions are still an incredibly tax efficient way to save for your retirement. And then the last one, the infinite question around the house price cap on the lifetime ISA. So I think many of you are aware of this given how you answered those polls, but the lifetime ISA does have a cap in terms of how much you can buy a house for using the lifetime ISA. It has been £450,000 since the product was introduced in 2017, and we all know what house prices have done in the 8 years since the lifetime ISA was introduced. House prices have gone up significantly. 35% is pretty normal in a lot of places, and the house price cap has not changed. Is there ever going to be a change to this? I would hope yes. Again, in our conversations with Treasury, they acknowledge it is an issue, but they do not currently seem minded to solve it. So my hope would be at some stage in the future, it may change because people do acknowledge it's an issue. I do not know whether it will change next year as part of the consultation, but it is basically the number one thing that we have been campaigning for and will continue to campaign for while the consultation on the lifetime ISA is open next year. We will take every opportunity to try and change this, as we do think it should increase as house prices has increased. And as I say, Treasury do realize this is an issue. They just have chosen not to solve it yet, which is very frustrating, but we will keep pushing. Okay, that is all of the content that we have for you today, and I can see we're just over half an hour. My email address is on the screen, which at some point of doing these webinars, I will realize I probably shouldn't do, but it is a great thing to get your feedback on this session. So please pop us in an email and say whether you enjoyed it, whether you thought it was exactly what you were hoping it would cover, whether you thought it would cover other things that we didn't cover. And then if there's any more specific questions that you wanted answered, please do pop them in. As I mentioned, we cannot give financial advice, but we can give you guidance. We can point you towards financial education, and we can answer the questions. We can answer any questions that you have as much as we can with the information that we have at the moment. Just having a look at the Q&As that have come in. There's a question from Thomas saying, how are cash ISA limits affected if you also already have a lifetime ISA? Again, this is a little bit TBC, but the understanding at the moment is that the lifetime ISA £4,000 cap will be in addition to the 12,000. So for example, you would be able to pay £12,000 into a cash ISA, £4,000 into a lifetime ISA, and then £4,000 into a stocks and shares ISA, taking you to the full £20,000. That is the current understanding. But again, watch this space. Another question on the interaction between cash ISA and lifetime ISA. So I am glad we've covered that off. How does the budget impact the Simple Saver product? As mentioned, savings tax will be increasing over the course of the next couple of years by 2 percentage points. So that is one to watch out for, because savings outside of an ISA will be taxed slightly more than they are today. And I think that's probably all the live Q&A that I should answer before I give our compliance team a heart attack. But we will take these away and we will answer as many of them we can do in terms of our content over the course of the next month and certainly into next year while all of these various consultations are live. Thank you very much for joining on your afternoon. If people joined late, you will be getting a recording of this session. And as mentioned, my email address is on the screen. Feel free to pop me any questions, feedback that you might have. But we will leave it at that for now. And thank you very much for joining the session today.